Before we begin today, it is my pleasure to announce that Marie D. Jones is going to become a frequent guest host on Dreamland. Marie is an accomplished author indeed. She is the author of Science, P-S-I-N-C-E, a book we have interviewed her about on Dreamland, which explores from a scientific viewpoint these extraordinary and strange phenomena that we all find so fascinating, and it is an incredible book. She's also just published a book, or is just publishing a book called The Deja Vu Enigma, which is about deja vu and what it is all about. But again, there is a strong scientific bent. Marie is very grounded, but, and this is what we love so much in a Dreamland host, also open-minded. So she's not going to take you down any paths that don't make sense. But when you go with Marie, you're going to go with someone who looks at the incredible, the paranormal, and the unusual with a careful scientist's eye and a really open mind. Before we go on, there's something else I want to talk to you about. There's something incredible happening that a lot of people don't realize how incredible it actually is. This is George Noory's Dark Matter DVDs. This is a phenomenon. What George is doing here is completely amazing. What he has done basically is taken programming that the networks or the TV won't touch, and he is presenting it in these DVDs that are loaded with each one of them 3 or 4 programs. And frankly, I've been watching them, and they're something very, very special. I just watched one on the second DVD called Apartment 206 that asks the question, are there other states of being beyond life and death? And I have to tell you, it resonated so deeply with me because I have a feeling that this is what part of the world of the dead is actually like, that somehow people who cannot give up the baggage of life end up in a situation that feels like this. It's just riveting stuff. And it's not the only one. They're all like that. And you know, I think there's a reason that these shows have never shown up anywhere. It's because they're too true. And people have just an instinctive aversion to this. TV executives think, no, I can't do that because somewhere in the back of my mind, in the depths of my soul, this feels like a secret. Well, the Dark Matter DVD program does contain a lot of very real secrets. I just love it. I really love it. So go to darkmatterdvds.com and get involved in it. And now I would like to welcome to Dreamland Marie D. Jones.
Thank you, Whitley. I have the pleasure today of talking with Robert Wagner, who is the author of Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self. This is a book I read cover to cover because I'm absolutely fascinated by the whole subject of dreaming. So we're going to get started and dive right into this. Robert, welcome.
Thanks, Marie. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, great. Well, okay, let's start with the absolute basics because we don't want to assume that everybody who's listening knows what a lucid dream is. So what is a very simple explanation for lucid dreams?
So lucid dreaming is being consciously aware of dreaming while in the dream state. So you consciously realize that everything around you is a dream.
Okay, now, there are times when I've had dreams where, my dreams are usually a little on the disturbing side. I don't know why, but at the end, when something awful is about to happen, I will kind of say to myself in the dream, don't worry, Marie, you're just dreaming, and I'll wake up. But I don't have any control. I mean, is control over what's happening in the dream a necessary element to be able to call it a lucid dream?
I think it is. What I think you're experiencing is what I call a semi-lucid dream. At the very end, you realize something is so incredible that this isn't right. It must be a dream. and then you wake up. When you have a fully lucid dream, then you consciously realize that you're dreaming, and you can also make conscious decisions about what you want to do. You can act on the dream however you want. You can remember things that you were thinking about during the day, and you can respond and experiment when you're consciously aware in the dream state. So that's what we mean by a fully lucid dream.
Okay, so just my being aware that I'm dreaming, I mean, that's like a good start.
Yeah, that's the excellent start, and you're right at the doorway. All you have to do is step inside.
Okay, and you make it sound so easy. But we'll talk about that later, about how we can sort of encourage ourselves to dream lucidly. Can anybody have a lucid dream? Is this something that seems to be common to everyone, or is it sort of a learned ability?
Well, it's becoming more common. They've done a lot of studies of college students around the world, asking them if they've ever become consciously aware in the dream state. And normally, between 50% and 90% of the students respond yes, that they've become consciously aware in the dream state. But I think part of that's just that we're more aware of it now, because if you talk to people who are in their 50s or 60s, maybe 20% would say that they've become consciously aware in the dream state. So it's something that after people hear about it, they're much more likely to become consciously aware in the dream state.
Right. It seems that whenever we suddenly pay attention to something, it sort of brings it about more often. I have had a lot of experiences with sleep paralysis, and to me, I mean, is that similar to maybe a lucid nightmare? Just that feeling of not being awake, but you are, you're aware of what's going on lucidly. Is there a similarity between those two?
Yeah, so sleep paralysis, for folks who might not be aware, sometimes you feel like you've woken in bed, but you can't move your body, or you feel like you have a heavy weight on your chest or something like that. And sometimes people will have kind of hallucinations at the same time, that someone's in the room or something like that. And so that's what people call sleep paralysis. Normally, I don't think of that as having too much to do with lucid dreaming, but it does have something to do with something similar to lucid dreaming, which normally people call out-of-body experiences.
Right. You write about that a lot, too, the similarities and the differences.
Right.
And could you maybe expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, for lucid dreamers, so it's becoming consciously aware when you're in the dream state. Normally, out-of-body experience occurs right at that junction between waking and sleeping. Sometimes you'll feel a buzzing around your head, or you feel kind of a vibration on your body or something like that. Some people at that state will suddenly shoot out of their body, or they'll roll out of their body, and they'll see their sleeping body laying on the bed, apparently.
Right.
But for lucid dreaming, you're in a dream, you'll see something odd or unusual, and you'll go, wait a second, that's too weird, this must be a dream.
Doesn't make any sense.
And so that's why lucid dreaming is, in many respects, a lot more fun and a lot easier, I think, than an out-of-body experience, and also different.
Is there such a thing as lucid nightmares? I mean, not that anybody would necessarily want to be lucid, but I'm thinking it might help people who have nightmares control them, maybe even be able to eradicate them completely by taking control of the dream.
What I've found, Marie, is there's a certain group of people who seem to lucid dream all the time. I mean, almost every night they'll have at least one lucid dream. And every time I talk to those people, they always seem to have something in common, and that's that as a child, they had a lot of nightmares, until it finally occurred to them that they only had these nightmares when they were dreaming, and so the next time they had that nightmare, it must be a dream.
Right.
And so they used their childhood nightmares to learn how to differentiate dreaming from waking, and so now they become consciously aware in the dream all the time and have a lot of fun as a result. So people often use lucid dreaming, or therapists do, to help people who have recurring nightmares to get over having recurring nightmares, because normally what happens, once you have one lucid dream and confront the nightmarish character, you'll never have that nightmare ever again.
Right. Now, we've always heard that dreams are our subconscious's way of dealing with all of the crap that occurs during our regular waking state. So I've always thought about if you're able to somehow control or manipulate your dreams, are you interfering with that psychological necessity of having your subconscious go through this process? Because you're changing elements that maybe wouldn't have been changed had the dream taken its ordinary path?
Well, every night we probably have 5 to 6 dream periods. So each night we'll actually spend 2 hours or more in the dream state. So if our subconscious wants to communicate with us, it has a lot of time every day.
It has other opportunities.
Lots of opportunities. So I think the beautiful thing about lucid dreaming is when you become consciously aware in the dream state, then sometimes you can consciously deal with whatever's there. Sometimes it's pretty obvious when you become consciously aware that there's some issue that needs attention, and then you can consciously go up to that angry dream figure and ask him, what do you represent? Or why are you in this dream? And sometimes they'll explain to you what's going on.
So it might actually give you more of a psychological benefit than just letting the dream take its natural course.
Right. It'll oftentimes give you insight. Some of these therapists who have taught people how to become consciously aware in the dream state in order to deal with recurring nightmares, sometimes they'll have those people, when they become consciously aware, they'll ask the nightmare figure, the witches or whatever it is, what do you represent? And sometimes the responses are quite hilarious. I remember one woman who was in therapy. She finally became consciously aware in the dream state, and then she remembered her therapist told her to ask those, nasty dream figures what they represent, and she was being chased by 3 women in all these recurring nightmares. When she asked them, what do you represent? They responded, well, we're your anxieties. You call us to you.
Huh.
And when she heard that they were her anxieties, then she suddenly realized, oh my God, my inability to deal with all my anxieties is making them appear and reappear in my dreams all the time.
Right.
So after that, she got that information, and also she understood finally that she really had to deal with her anxieties instead of just trying to wish them away.
Do you see this being more of a part of therapy or mental health where therapists will begin to use this more often? Because it seems to work a lot better than putting somebody on an anti-anxiety or antidepressant. Having them actually face some of the things that are causing their fears and their nightmares. Do you see a real receptivity to lucid dreaming studies in the healthcare field, or even, maybe you could even talk about how this is being received scientifically?
Well, I think therapists, and especially therapists who deal with people with post-traumatic stress disorder and recurring nightmares, are beginning to hear more and more about successful cases of lucid dreaming, helping people who suffer from recurring nightmares to overcome it. So it's becoming more and more well known. And lucid dreaming has a scientific basis, of course. There were some gentlemen back in the late 1970s, Keith Hearn and Alan Worsley in England, and Stephen LaBerge here at Stanford in the U.S., who scientifically proved that lucid dreaming occurs. And what they did is they went into a sleep lab, and they realized that you could still move your eyes in the dream state, and because we have rapid eye movement in the dream state. And so what they did was put little pads on lucid dreamers' eyes, and then they told them, okay, when you become consciously aware in the dream state, signal your awareness by moving your eyes left to right 5 times or 8 times, and we'll pick it up on our polygraph machine. And so that's how they actually scientifically proved lucid dreaming.
Right. Now, I would think that something like this for, say, veterans of wars, rape, abuse victims, like you said, psychological trauma, that this would be a really good avenue of giving them some help, especially a sense of control, because I think that's what a lot of people that have been victims of maybe even violent crimes feel like they've lost control. And the idea that you can control your dreams just seems so outlandish.
Oh, yeah. When you can direct your focus in the dream state, not only can you deal with those issues you just mentioned, but also people do it for other reasons as well. In my book, I have a chapter on people who have used lucid dreaming to heal themselves of physical issues when they're consciously aware in the dream state. And also I have chapters on people who have used lucid dreaming to see if they could get unknown information, like telepathic, clairvoyant, or precognitive information. So there's actually a lot of things that you can use this for. It's an incredible kind of magical technique that a person can use to explore their greater reality.
Right. You talk in the book about something that might seem a little strange to people, false awakenings. I really was intrigued by this because I've had this happen in regular dreams where I thought I woke up and everything was okay, and then I realized I was still dreaming. Does this suggest to you that there are different levels of reality that your mind sort of moves through from the dreaming to the waking state?
It might. In my book, I wonder, instead of calling them false awakenings, if we shouldn't call them alternate awakenings. Because it might be that actually what's happening is that the dreamer is awakening in a probable reality that looks like their bedroom, but actually is a probable bedroom or something like that. And so it does make you wonder if there's probable realities or alternate dimensions, and that's why lucid dreamers sometimes have false awakenings.
Right, because it's kind of frightening to think that you're fully awake and then realize, oh, no, wait a minute, something's wrong with this picture. And you get that sort of panicky sense of, well, am I going to ever wake up? And I've had that happen many times, and I guess in a sense you're lucidly aware that that's happening to you. So you could call that a lucid dream.
That's what some people do. So just for listeners to understand, so sometimes you're having a lucid dream, and then you realize that the dream is going to collapse and you're going to wake up. But sometimes when you wake up, you think you've woken up, and you look at your dream journal, and you'll see that your lucid dream is already written down, and you'll wonder for a second, well, wait a second, who wrote down this lucid dream? And then you'll realize, oh, no, I'm still dreaming, and then you wake up. So that's what we call a false awakening. But sometimes what people do when they realize that they've falsely awakened, then they'll realize, well, boy, if I'm still lucid dreaming, I'll just go have some more fun. And so they'll go
right back
out of the house and have a lot more fun with it. But after a while, it just becomes relatively commonplace, and it's something that I would say probably happens in about 10% of my lucid dreams.
Right.
Do I have what we call a false awakening?
Robert, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue this discussion.
Subscribers, don't miss the Dreamland Stargate experience, October 16th to 18th. This is going to really be something at the Joshua Tree Retreat Center. We've got all kinds of things planned, including a Skywatch on Saturday night. Also, Starfire Tor is going to be there along with me and William and Anne. And Starfire is a person who induces time slips. She's done it in my life and in Anne's life. And her associate, Brandon Scott, will be there too, corroborating her information. And Anne and I will be supporting her as personal witnesses to what has happened. Starfire Tor rarely makes a public appearance, so don't miss this. And we're going to have a beautiful Skywatch, weather permitting, on Saturday night. Who knows what may happen? Who knows what indeed may happen? So don't miss it. Go to theunknowncountry.com store and get involved.
Okay, we're back with Robert Waggoner. We were talking about lucid dreams and whether they might suggest the mind moving through different levels of reality to get from the sleep state to the waking state. What seems to be going on with your consciousness? When you're lucid dreaming, are you fully conscious?
Well, you're more conscious than you were. In normal dreaming, the dream portions of the brain are activated, which is kind of the lower portions or the more ancient portions of the brain are activated. But in the lucid dreaming, something interesting happens, and that's the more conscious parts of the brain, the prefrontal cortex and all, suddenly they light up as well. So not only do you have the ancient part of the brain, but the newer part of the brain both lit up at the same time. And one thing that I think that leads to is oftentimes when people become consciously aware in the dream state, the first thing they feel is this incredible rush of kind of euphoric energy that they're just so amazed and excited and feel so powerful to be consciously aware in the dream state. So it's a little bit different conscious awareness than what you have during the day, but it's kind of a unique kind of conscious awareness when you're lucidly aware in the dream.
But also different parts of the brain are definitely at work than that would be during just a regular normal dream. That's
right.
Really interesting because you have to wonder, is there another type of dreaming that we don't know about yet that might trigger other parts of the brain and another level of consciousness? And it seems to me that this is what's really exciting is that we always have this sort of outward look at the world. Well, everything out there is exciting and we want to go out and discover the stars and the galaxies, but really what's going on inside of us is just as fascinating.
Oh, yeah. We all have this inner magic kingdom, and when we're consciously aware, we can actually explore it and see what there is there.
Do most lucid dreams, what are some of the commonalities that you've found, people that talk about their dreams? What seems to be some of the tried and true structure that's involved in a lucid dream?
Well, so there's kind of different ways of thinking about that. Sometimes people focus on what is it that lucid dreamers normally do when they become consciously aware. And probably the number one thing that lucid dreamers do is they like to go flying. There's something about flying around the dream landscape, just that freedom of being above everything and soaring above everything, and you can fly through walls and just go and go and go. And so I think that's one of the common features when you start reading lucid dream reports is how much people enjoy that. Another thing you'll often find is lucid dreamers like to talk to dream figures because they're consciously aware. They'll go up and talk to dream figures. And one interesting thing, though, is oftentimes lucid dreamers discover that dream figures don't like to be told that they're dream characters.
They want to be just as real as we are, huh?
That's right. And I remember one lucid dreamer went up to a dream figure and said, "Do you know I'm dreaming you?" And then the dream figure responded, "How do you know I'm not dreaming you?"
See, now that would drive me crazy.
and so there's some really fascinating encounters when you're consciously aware that you can have with the dream figures. So sometimes when I'm lucidly aware in a dream, I'll ask the dream figures to explain the symbolism of the dream.
Of the dream, right.
And it's quite fascinating to have the dream figures suddenly point around the dream and explain what the different objects represent.
I've always felt that if our dreams are, nature's way of sort of psychologically healing us, or at least helping us along a little bit, why there's still so much misery and depression and anxiety and sickness in the world. If this is our way of sort of rejuvenating ourselves, it doesn't quite seem to be working that well. So what you're saying is that in a lucid dream, we have the ability to really get the most out of the symbols that are being presented to us by asking.
Right. We can learn about the symbolism, but also we can get in touch with the larger aspects of our mind. And I have some techniques in my book to show people, how to actually do that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that towards the end. I want to save the good stuff on the how. We're going to do the why first, the what and the why. But again, I want to get back into this idea. What are some of the most widely known theories about lucid dreams? I mean, we were discussing the possibility that they are our way of experiencing another reality. Are there scientists who think it's just, the brain's being triggered to do something and none of it's real and it's all your imagination?
That is true to some degree, that some people still are thinking of lucid dreaming as just another brain response, and so they're curious about brain activity when you're lucidly aware and those kind of things. But I think for us lucid dreamers who have been lucid dreaming for 10, 20, 30 years or more, we've really come to see it in a different fashion, and that's by experimenting we've come to show that lucid dreaming seems to not only put you in touch with a deeper layer of yourself, but also can put you in touch with unknown information.
Right.
And when you think about the unknown information, Carl Jung brought up the idea of the collective unconscious.
Right.
And so sometimes I wonder, if that's where this information is coming from, is some sort of collective unconscious that all of us are hooked into or have awareness of.
Right, and normally during the day when you're busy, you're just not able to tap into that field of awareness and knowledge.
Right, and when you're aware in the subconscious, like you are in a lucid dream, then it seems like you have more immediate access to that collective unconscious, and you can actually direct questions to it and get responses.
Do you find that people who lucid dream regularly are more functional? Are they happier? Are they more psychologically, positive people?
That's a good question. I don't know how to respond. I don't want to put lucid dreamers up on a pedestal. But one thing that is interesting though is probably 80% of the lucid dreamers, if you ask them how they felt the day after the lucid dream, many of them will talk that for the next 3 or 4 hours, or sometimes the whole day or a few days, they have this kind of lucid afterglow,
right?
Where they just feel this kind of great feeling of, they became consciously aware and they had this incredible experience in the dream state, and they just have this kind of just happy feeling about that. So
it's a very uplifting experience. It stays with you, and they do find that it helps them deal better with issues when in their normal waking conscious state.
Well, I would say a lot of them who go in that direction do. When they want to find answers to issues that are bothering them, oftentimes they can find those answers when they become consciously aware in the dream state. I had an interview where a person called in, and he was a novelist, and he told me in this radio interview that when he had a hard time writing his novels, that then he'd have a lucid dream, become consciously aware, and he would seek out the novel characters and talk to them about how the novel should progress.
And in that way, writers out there, listen up.
Yeah, and so in that way, he would come to get some insight in how it should all go. And I told him, that was one of the beautiful things about lucid dreams. You could seek out the muse. Instead of waiting for the muse of creativity to come to you, when you're consciously aware in the dream state, you can seek that out and come to some sort of resolution. Because
on a conscious level, we tend to block the information we need from coming to us. The right brain sort of shut down. Would you say that lucid dreaming is really allowing the right brain to sort of run free?
Well, lucid dreaming, I think, allows kind of the whole brain to interact. So we have that kind of conscious waking part of ourselves that now is in that dream state, which is kind of the right brain part of ourselves. And so it's kind of a meeting of the minds,
the more holistic
say. Yeah, the rational mind meets the intuitive mind, and they can begin to interact more successfully. One thing that I would say as someone who's been lucid dreaming for 30 years, I believe it's made me much more aware of intuitional information during the day. I'm much more conscious when I get those little hints in my head. All of a sudden I stop and think about them and oftentimes act on those little intuitional nudges.
Pay attention. Do you find yourself having a lot more synchronistic experiences?
Yeah, I really have. As I've gone deeper and deeper into lucid dreaming, it's also made my waking life much more interesting as well.
Right. I would think that it really does give you the idea that there is a level of connectedness below what we see, the level that we live on and perceive, and the normal consciousness. And so, knowing that, I could see that it's a positive thing to know that you always have that to tap into when you need to.
Right, and that's how I titled the chapter, my final chapter in my book. I called it "The Unified Self in a Connected Universe."
Right.
I think lucid dreaming shows us that there's greater connections than what our rational mind would tell us.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, our rational mind tells us we're separate, we're individuals, there's no connection. But here we go to this different level of reality, and we see that there is this interconnectedness.
Right.
We're going to take another quick break, and we will be right back with Robert Waggoner.
You're listening to Dreamland. Serious wonder spoken here.
Okay, we're back with Robert Waggoner, author of Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self. I would like to know, the people that you refer to that we meet in lucid dreams, the figures, the entities, are they real? Are they figments of our imagination? What are they? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay. You know, as I went deeper and deeper in lucid dreaming, at first I was like most people. I assumed that the dream figures just represented some symbolic projection of myself or some aspect of myself. And so initially as a lucid dreamer, that's how I treated them, that they were just symbolic projections and that's all they were. But then, as I had more and more dream experiences, I realized that dream figures were actually more complicated. Like I had mentioned, sometimes you'd talk to a dream figure and say, hey, I'm creating you. And the dream figure would say, hey, how do you know I'm not creating you? And you'd have this very curious, very rational kind of conversation with the dream figure, and you'd begin to wonder about it. So as I went on in my dream state and my lucid dreaming, I realized that some dream figures were just symbolic projections, while other dream figures seemed to have a type of conscious awareness. And then what was even more shocking, about every 10 years, I would meet a dream figure who would tell me that it was a guide or a guardian.
Right.
And it was there to help me to deal with the dream state. And sometimes they would give me information about dreaming and lucid dreaming, and were actually very helpful. So that's one of the curious things that I think psychology is going to learn from lucid dreamers, is that all dream figures are not created equal.
Right.
They're different.
And again, we are able to access maybe higher knowledge or wisdom from some of these figures that we have absolutely no way of doing so during our normal waking state. So it almost sounds like, the same benefits as, say, deep meditation.
I think there's some commonalities between deep meditation and lucid dreaming. In fact, I just written an article for a magazine that I co-edit called the Lucid Dream Exchange, and that's what it was about, was deep meditators oftentimes experience light and geometric symbols and sacred symbols as they go deeper into meditation experiences. And when you talk to experienced lucid dreamers, oftentimes you'll find the same thing, that they're experiencing geometric shapes,
right,
sacred symbols, and lights. And so it seems like there's kind of a commonality there in what lucid dreamers and deep meditators are experiencing.
So maybe you could say that lucid dreaming is the sleeping version of a deep meditation, which is something we do when we're awake.
A curious thing that some lucid dreamers do is when they become consciously aware in the dream state, they decide to meditate. And I'll tell you, Marie, when you decide to meditate within a lucid dream, within seconds, you have this expanded sense of self, of spacelessness and spaciousness, and kind of a sense of oneness that's really hard to describe.
Wow.
So you can take some of these waking practices, these waking spiritual practices, and do them in the lucid dream state, and they become immensely more powerful and unforgettable. It's really quite something.
Huh. So it intensifies the experience.
Yes.
That's, wow. Well, I guess really what most people would like to know is, how do you learn to have a lucid dream? How can you make this happen? Especially for someone who's never had it happen before, not even by accident.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a few ways that I suggest to people of techniques to become consciously aware in the dream state. The first one is the one that I used a long time ago when I was a junior in high school. And I had read a book by Carlos Castaneda called Journey to Ixtlan, in which his teacher, Don Juan, told him that he should find his hands in the dream state. And so I wasn't exactly sure. The instructions weren't very good, so I just kind of made up my own approach. So this is what I'd do. Each night before I'd go to sleep, when I was already tired and ready to go to sleep, I would sit there and look at the palms of my hands all the time, saying to myself, tonight in my dreams, when I see my hands, I'll realize I'm dreaming. Tonight in my dreams, when I see my hands, I'll realize I'm dreaming. So I did this for 3 or 4 nights, and then on the 3rd or 4th night, all of a sudden I was in a dream walking through my high school hallway when my hands just popped right in front of my face. And I realized, my hands, this is a dream.
I did it.
I finally did it. And it was so incredible to look around and realize that everything that a moment ago I had taken as real as reality, now I knew was just a dream. And I could feel the wall, and it felt exactly like it should, and everything around me was just a dream. So that was my first approach, was by looking at my hands before I'd go to sleep and establishing that idea that when I see my hands, I'll realize I'm dreaming. The other ways that people do this is just through simple suggestion.
Right.
So at night or when they're getting ready for bed, they'll do something like, tonight in my dreams, when I see something odd, I will realize I am dreaming and become consciously aware. So tonight in my dreams, when I see something odd, I'll realize I'm dreaming and become consciously aware. And so, you'll be dreaming and you'll see fish swimming through the air.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden you'll say, wait a second, fish don't swim through the air, they swim through the water. And then you'll become consciously aware. So
right.
You can use that power of suggestion to become consciously aware in the dream state. And
I've heard of people doing that, just suggesting to themselves, tonight I'm going to dream the answer to, whether I should take job A or job B.
Right.
So in a sense, they're using the power of suggestion, but they're not using it to create a sense of lucidity in the dream. So you're just saying take that one step further by setting an intention to be aware that you're in the dream state.
Right, exactly, yeah. And it can be very powerful, but oftentimes it takes some persistence, so you have to kind of be dedicated to your goal and persist. But one thing I've discovered is oftentimes people who hear me speak about lucid dreaming, that night or the night afterwards, they'll have their first lucid dream and become consciously aware.
Right. So sometimes just by thinking about it throughout the day, you might trigger it into happening, that sense of paying extra attention to it.
I think curiosity is a great thing, and so especially the people who are most curious about it or really wonder, can you really do this, or
right.
what's that really
like?
like?
I've got to try this.
and subconsciously, all of a sudden they're all open for it, and every light is green, and they have their lucid dream. And it's an incredible experience. It really is.
Well, a friend of mine, actually my writing partner, sent me a dream mask. I don't know if you've seen these.
Right.
But it's supposed to control your lucid dreams. It's a sleep mask with integrated electronics that sense when you're dreaming through the detection of rapid eye movement, REM. And I guess upon detection, it emits bright pulses of LED light and audio cues to assist you in having a lucid dream. Now, I have not tried this yet. I have to tell you, I'm actually nervous. If somebody wants to try, but they're afraid, what can you tell them? My fear is that I'm going to lose control. I don't do drugs. I don't do anything that will where I'll lose control of my mind. But I really want to try this.
And that's one thing that is important for people to recognize is that you have to address your fears. No one should ever deny their fears, but they should ask themselves, now, why do I have this fear, and try to understand it and kind of come to some sort of agreement with their fear. The thing about lucid dreams is that every night, there's hundreds of thousands of people who are becoming consciously aware in the dream state, and 99% of them are having an absolute blast. They're just having a great time. So when you become consciously aware in the dream state, there's 4 things that I recommend that people do in those first 15 or 30 seconds. And the first thing you want to do, when you become consciously aware in the dream state, you want to modulate your emotions. You can't get too excited
right.
or too or something like that, or too worried, because if you have too much emotion, you'll just immediately wake up. The next thing you want to do is elevate your awareness. And so what you might do as soon as you become consciously aware in the dream state is do something like what they call a reality check. And that's where you decide to levitate a little bit just to prove that you're in the dream
state.
See
what you can do. Try out your wings, so to speak.
That's right. Or you might put your hand through the wall just to prove to yourself that you're lucid dreaming. Also, sometimes people at that point, they'll shout something out to the dream like, greater clarity now, or more lucid awareness. And sometimes these vocalized intents show immediate results, and you do feel more lucidly aware. And then the other thing you have to do is just maintain your focus.
Right.
Sometimes you'll be in a lucid dream, and it'll be so interesting that you'll forget that you're in a lucid dream, and you'll just go back to regular dreaming.
So you do go back and forth. You have to remain on top of what you're doing. And
yeah, you have to remain consciously aware that this is a dream. And so sometimes people do that, especially in the early years, by just repeating every 15 or 30 seconds, this is a dream, or I'm dreaming this. And finally, once you've done all that, then you've created a pretty stable environment, and then you can go exploring. You can go find out information, or go talk to dream figures, or start flying around, or do whatever you want to do.
So it might even be a good idea to come up with a little mantra that you can take with you into the dream. Like you said, I'm lucid, I'm awake, I'm aware in my dream. Something that you can repeat if you do feel yourself slipping out of it.
For beginners, it's probably a good idea, because oftentimes beginners, they become consciously aware, and they're consciously aware for a minute or two, but they just get so entranced by the dreaming because it's so interesting, and they forget that they're consciously aware, and they just become normal dreamers again.
Right. Well, it's like anything that requires practice. So somebody who, say, tonight, after hearing this, wants to try out having a lucid dream, you would say don't get discouraged if it doesn't happen the first few times. Keep at it. Follow some of the techniques that you talk about in the book.
Exactly. It's important to persist. Also, one thing that a lot of lucid dreamers have discovered, if they read about lucid dreaming before they go to sleep, they're much more likely to have a lucid dream.
Well, there you go.
I've seen on Amazon.com, some kid wrote in a review of my book, and he said he had read other books on lucid dreaming and nothing ever happened. But he read my book, and within the first 50 pages, he'd already had 2 lucid dreams.
Wow.
And so he felt like power was emanating from the pages. But it's one of those things, when you get emotionally involved and really curious about the idea, you're much more likely to have a lucid dream.
Okay, so curiosity is a good requirement, a good recommendation to have when you go into this. We're going to take another really quick break, Robert. We'll be right back.
This is Whitley Strieber's Dreamland. Expert hosts, unique information.
Okay, we're back for our final segment with Robert Waggoner, author of Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self. We have proof that buying and reading this book will help you have lucid dreams, so make sure you get it. It's published by Moment Point Press. Absolutely awesome. I mean, it's about so many things other than just having a lucid dream. I want to ask you, though, are there any dangers that people need to know about when they start having lucid dreams or encouraging themselves to have them?
Well, when you're lucid dreaming, it's an important thing, I think, to do a reality check, just to be sure that you're having a lucid dream. So if you can float, if you can put your finger through the wall, something like that, proves to you that you're lucid dreaming. And so that's always a good idea to do. I wouldn't recommend lucid dreaming for people who are having a hard time with this waking reality. If you're having a hard time with waking reality, I don't think I would play around too much with the dream reality. But for most of us, lucid dreaming is one of those exciting, fun things, and once we do it once, we just want to do it more and more and see what we can learn.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, the fact that you can get hooked on this, because a lot of the anecdotes that you give about lucid dreams, they're very fun, they're positive, people are getting information out of them that they wouldn't otherwise have. So it seems like a very fun thing to do. Do you find that people get hooked on it? And like we were talking, you just said, they have a harder time dealing with the boring day-to-day reality.
Well, that's kind of the beauty and the unfortunate thing about lucid dreaming is that it can be so fun that all you do is fun stuff. But I did want to say that Buddhist, I remember the Buddhist yogi Naropa, he said that dream yoga, which is basically conscious dreaming or lucid dreaming, was one of the 6 paths to enlightenment. And so Buddhists take lucid dreaming very seriously and see it as a possible pathway to greater and greater spiritual illumination. So a lot of lucid dreamers just get hooked on the fun of it.
Right.
And that's what my book is about, saying that lucid dreaming actually is a gateway to so much more. And you can experiment, you can find out things, and you can also go deeply into religious, spiritual concepts and just have amazing experiences. So that's why I wrote that book. I wanted to help lucid dreamers really see the depth of it.
So once they have the fun, which get through the honeymoon period of just flying around and seeing what kind of fun they can have, there is that urge to move to a deeper level and see how this can really help them, with, like you said, healing an illness they may have, or psychologically, or confronting old fears.
Right. I remember a college student wrote me and said, well, it sounds like I believe that you could get unknown information in the lucid dream state. And I wrote back, sure you can. And I encouraged him to do an experiment. And so what this college student did, he talked to one of his friends in the dormitory who had a bizarre freckle on her back, she told him. And so she said, the next time you become consciously aware, come find me and find my bizarre freckle on my back.
Oh, wow.
And so the first lucid dream he tried, he was walking through the dorm trying to get to her room, but he just had all these feelings that he couldn't make it, and so he ended up waking up. But the next time he became consciously aware, he thought, okay, I'll just have her come to my room instead of trying to go find her. And so all of a sudden she appeared in his room, and she turned around, and he asked to see the bizarre freckle, and he saw it. He saw the bizarre freckle, but he was really surprised. It was on a part of her back. She'd kind of hinted that it was on the side of her back, but actually it was right at the bottom of her back. And so he's kind of surprised to see it there.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, he wakes up, runs down to her dorm room, knocks on the door, says he's found the bizarre freckle in a lucid dream. He puts his finger on her shirt. She pulls up her shirt, and his finger is right on the bizarre freckle.
Wow.
And so that made him start to think, maybe there's something more to this lucid dreaming. Yeah. So that's what I try to get people interested in, is doing their own experiments to really see how deep the information is that you can get in a lucid dream.
You talk a little bit about mutual lucid dreaming. This has always interested me. Is it possible to call up a friend and say, hey, let's meet out there tonight at, out on the lucid dreaming plane, and actually have two people be in the same dream? Can you talk about that?
I'll just tell you a story about that. I have a chapter in the book on it, and I think it's happening, and people are actually experiencing it. Sometimes one person is lucidly aware and the other person isn't. So like, this is what happened to me in a lucid dream. I was consciously aware, and all of a sudden I saw my friend Mo walk into this restaurant. And I went up to her and I go, Mo, do you realize this is a dream? But she had this look on her face. Lucid dreamers call it kind of the drunken sailor syndrome, that they can't focus and their head's kind of rolling around, and they just don't seem like they're focusing. So I grabbed her and I floated up 5 feet, and I said, look, Mo, we're floating. This is a dream. But she just didn't seem to get it, and I was getting kind of frustrated. So then I put a peace sign right in front of her face. I put my fingers in a peace sign, and I put it right in front of her face, and I go, Mo, whenever you see this peace sign, you can become consciously aware. And so I told her that, and then I woke up. About 4 months later, I was in the San Francisco area on business where Mo lives, and I called her up to see if she wanted to get together for lunch. I'd never told her this lucid dream. So I'm standing outside of the restaurant, and here comes Mo walking down the sidewalk, and she comes walking right up to me, and then all of a sudden she puts her fingers in a peace sign and shoves them right in my face. and I go, Mo, why did you do that? And she goes, I don't know. I just felt like it.
So you connected with some level of her subconscious, and she wasn't even aware of how that happened.
That's right, exactly. So when you have experiences like that, you really do begin to wonder, is my dream sort of merging with Mo's dream, or are we telepathically sharing information in this dream state? But when you read that chapter, it really makes you want to experiment a little bit more and find some of your lucid dreaming friends to go and have fun with.
And you also talk about reaching deceased loved ones, which a lot of people are interested in doing.
You know, oftentimes lucid dreamers, they become consciously aware when they see a deceased family member. Like they'll see grandma, and then they'll realize, well, boy, grandma's been dead for 15 years. This must be a dream. And the great thing is, when you're consciously aware, then you can actually talk to grandma, and sometimes you'll be surprised. Grandma will have a message for the family, and then you can see whether that message has validity or not. I remember my niece had one of those kind of dreams where she met her great-grandmother, and her great-grandmother passed on some information to her, and so my niece calls me up in the morning and says, what do I do with this information? And I told her to investigate it, find out if it was true.
Right.
And so she called around, and she was shocked to learn that her great-grandmother had been deceased for 10 or more years, had passed on some valid information to her. So it's really a curious thing when you can get that kind of information. It really makes you see the depth of lucid dreaming for exploring the conscious mind and the nature of reality.
Well, and it also gives you evidence that it isn't just our imaginations making all this up, especially when people are able to access information that they should not have access to, and they're able to corroborate it later. It really does speak to the idea that we're going to another level of reality, and we're having experiences there that are just as real as the ones that we're having on this level.
And you know, I think the great thing about lucid dreaming is you can also take these experiments into a scientific setting. Like, let's say I worked with a scientist who wanted me to get precognitive information. He could tell me what information he wanted me to get. I could become lucidly aware in a dream, go seek it, wake up with it, give it to him, and then we could both wait a month later for the future event to occur.
Well, that was my next question, because we only have a few minutes left, is what is happening now with scientific research? Are things like that going on in labs anywhere?
You know, I'm hoping that people who read my book will start to realize that lucid dreaming really has potential for psychology or parapsychology to investigate all of these areas, because most all of us have normal dreams that are precognitive or telepathic or clairvoyant or whatever, but we can't really prove it. But here with lucid dreaming, because the lucid dreamer can go seek out the information, then the lucid dreamer is in a context where he can actually provide scientific evidence. But so far, Marie, scientists haven't picked up on that yet.
Well, let's hope they do, because again, like you said, this is one area where there could be proof.
Exactly.
And it could really lead to more of our understanding of consciousness and reality, and not just what happens when we're sleeping. And I would hope that anybody out there who has access to universities or research organizations would really push for this to happen. It's absolutely fascinating. We only have a couple of minutes left, and I want to ask you what you're working on now.
You know, my publisher has asked me to work on another book on lucid dreaming, where I'm going to explore some of the things I didn't bring up in my first book. And some of that is, oftentimes when I become consciously aware in the dream state, I would go out and seek reincarnational figures. I would ask dream figures to show me a past life incarnation of myself. And so in this book, I'm going to be sharing some of that, and also investigating more the Buddhist idea that lucid dreaming is a way that in the after-death state, instead of being caught up in another reincarnational cycle, the lucid dreamer who's familiar with lucid dreaming can actually decide a little bit more consciously what they want to do in their next incarnation.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. This has been such a pleasure for me. I'm going to have a lucid dream tonight. I'm going to do it.
Okay, I'm
going to have one in your honor. Robert, do you have a website where people can learn more about you and also contact you?
Yeah, you can go to my website, which is www.lucidadvice.com. So that's lucidadvice.com. Or you can also find me at dreaminglucid.com. That's dreaminglucid.com.
And they can keep up on everything that you're doing.
That's right. They can keep up with where I'm going to be speaking or giving talks and all that kind of thing.
Wonderful. And the book is available on the Dreamland website. It is called Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self. My guest has been Robert Waggoner. Robert, thank you so much. This is